For the first time in nearly 90 years, the UK Cabinet has met in Scotland. Gordon Brown brought his senior ministers to Glasgow for a meeting which focused on the economy. But it was events at Westminster and an apology from the Prime Minister over email smears that dominated today's visit. Here's our political editor, Brian Taylor.
Bring Brown down, eh? Not sure he needs external enemies, given what some of his chums have been up to. As here with Clyde shipyard workers, Gordon Brown wants to talk up job prospects. But to get the chance, he needs to close down the row over email smears drafted by his former special advisor, Damien McBride. He'd voiced regret. It wasn't enough. And so, finally, we got the S word.
Well, I'm sorry about what happened. I've said all along that when I saw this first, I was horrified, I was shocked, and I was very angry indeed. I think the most important thing we do is reassure people that everything is being done to clean up politics in our country. I wrote to those people who were affected by it. I expressed a very deep regret for what happened. The person who was responsible went immediately and lost his job, and I've ensured that there are new rules so that this can't happen again.
Today's UK Cabinet meeting in Glasgow was the first such gathering in Scotland since 1921. It was intended to stress the relevance of the UK to Scotland. The tough wooing began with a business breakfast in Edinburgh. Among umpteen events across the day, Peter Mandelson tried out an electric car at Knockhill. Jackie Smith inspected security at Glasgow Airport. And David Miliband met Muslim community leaders. In a question session with invited citizens, the Prime Minister promised that next week's budget would tackle the economic downturn.
It will be a budget for jobs. We want to help those people who are unemployed get back to work as quickly as possible. We want to help people who are on incapacity benefit now but want to work to be given better chances than they have. We want young people who are wanting to do apprenticeships to be able to do them and to complete their apprenticeships.
But the First Minister says those efforts could be undermined if Scottish spending is cut next year.
Although the economy will be starting to move out of recession, we won't be out the woods by any means, then they run the risk of choking off a recovery just when it's starting to get going.
But as the Glasgow Cabinet closed this evening, UK ministers insisted that efficiency savings must form part of the response to the downturn.
Well, Brian Taylor joins us now from the SECC in Glasgow. Is it overly cynical, Brian, to see this as a bit of a PR stunt?
Certainly some are seeing it that way. It is part of an initiative across the UK to take the Cabinet to various venues, unlike his predecessor in rather different circumstances. I don't think Gordon Brown felt the hand of history on his shoulders this afternoon when he hosted the Cabinet here in Glasgow. It was much more workmanlike, and I'm sure that was the right approach given the nature of the economic crisis. The focus was very much upon setting out what the UK government believes it can and will do with regard to the economy.
Will it achieve anything at all, do you think?
I think that the success would be perhaps as much internal as external. The external mission was to attempt to counter the SNP by suggesting that only the clout of the UK could, for example, have rescued the Scottish banks. I think that's a fairly familiar argument that is contested back and forth. Jim Murphy, the Scottish Secretary, gave a presentation to the Cabinet here. One of the purposes there was to remind them that half the money spent in Scotland is actually in the control of the UK government, not the Scottish government. In other words, if you like, it was a relearning process for Mr Murphy's Cabinet colleagues, stressing to them the need to continue to engage with Scotland, not to leave a vacuum into which, from the UK government's perspective, the SNP can pour.
Brian Taylor, thank you. A man's been charged in connection with the death of a colleague in an Aberdeen